The global market is yet again in the midst of another presidential election, with uncertainties filling up the market. The election has brought about something investors dreaded the most, which is uncertainties as a result of a divided electorate and candidates disposed to fight for votes. Investors are finding it a bit difficult to confidently arrive at a conclusion about what the next government administration will bring to bear for their investment portfolios and for markets in general. But how exactly will the policy direction of the presidential candidates influence global economy and investment prospects for Africa, particularly Nigeria, which is considered the largest economy in the continent? Well, I have joining me live in the studio two experts to give an in-depth analysis into our topic of discuss on the show today. Mr. Robert OMOTUNDE is the Chief Investment Officer of AFRINVEST Assets Management Limited, and I also have Mrs. Yemi Shola Oyegbade. She's a Finance Manager, JNC International Limited. Thank you, gentlemen and lady, for joining us on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me start with the ladies. Say ladies first. Now we've seen a lot, but I am worried that whoever wins this election at the end of the day would grapple with an economy that has been faced with COVID-19, almost unemployment rates not looking very good. What do you think would happen to whoever wins this election, even at the end of the day, with the present state of the economy in the United States?
Well, thanks for having me on this show once again, Tolu. Like you've rightly said, whoever it is that eventually becomes the president of the United States, we don't know who it is, definitely has to grapple with an economy that is not in a good shape. You know, the U.S. economy was doing well, and as most economies of the world prior to the almighty tsunami of COVID-19, and you know, all the gains that had been made, you know, everything was reversed. So the first thing they need to do, I mean, whoever it is that comes on, but be it Trump, be it Biden, the economy, there has to be an immediate assessment, and there has to be an immediate intervention. Biden has come up to say that if he's the one that wins the election, he's going to make sure that he's going to increase testing capacities, and then he's going to make sure that no one goes, I mean, anyone that gets into the clinic for COVID-19 related illnesses, they're not going to be making any payment. It's going to be free. You know, he's going to make sure that, I mean, he's going to bring on debt relief, student loans. He's going to increase social welfare packages. And then, you know, there was this CARES Act that came on, and it was touted that did not really favor some communities in the United States. But I want to believe that although we are looking at a predominantly Republican Senate, I don't see how he's going to work on that, but I also believe he wants to try as much as possible to bring relief onto the economy, because once there is confidence in the economy, once the populace have money to spend, the disposable income is intact, you're sure that you're going to ride out whatever economic tumult that might be ahead for whoever it is that is coming on as the next president.
I want to start, Robert, on this way. We know of the issues, China, the tariff issues. We talked about this and the effect on the global economy. Yeah. What does this make? Give us an overview first of what you see and what you expect.
Yeah. First, the election has come as a surprise. If you speak to some of us in the investment world, we are saying no more to election polls, because election polls suggested something completely different from what we're saying. It's a tight race. You know, and that's what is beginning to emerge from the results we're seeing right now. But be that as it may, you know, Trump stands for, you know, something different from the usual politics. You know, when you look at the policies that he has tried to, you know, implement, even his riding to power was on voting against the establishment. You know, people have seen, and he has been able to appeal to a vast majority of Americans who for some reason might even be shameful to come out to say they support Trump. But underlying, at least from the results that we have seen, you know, shows that he still enjoys a huge level of support in America. In fact, even if he doesn't win this election, it still, you know, poses some risk, so to speak, because he has a large following. Will he stop tweeting after, you know, leaving the White House? That is not likely going to happen. But be that as it may, if we have a Biden presidency, what it means for the world economy is that, I mean, we're going to take some breather in terms of all of the tantrums that we're seeing in trade wars, you know, and trade in the US is very significant. You know, this is an economy that contributes close to 25% of global GDP. You know, so if we see a significant moderation in all of the trade wars, you know, the back and forth between between Beijing and the White House, then we will begin to see some form of, you know, respite in terms of how the economy picks up. But definitely, like she said, and I agree completely, that whoever becomes the president, we still have to grapple with this possible second wave that we are beginning to see. If it's a Trump, we know that there won't be a shutdown or a lockdown, a second lockdown. And the tendency is that we might even see the figures skyrocket more. The implication of that for you know, global oil is not looking good, you know, and that's how it affects Nigeria. But if it's a Trump, a Biden presidency, what we are likely to see is some form of seriousness coming from the top about how to contain COVID-19. And, you know, President Trump has shown a lot of disregard for the containment of COVID-19. And, you know, in one of his campaigns, he even came out to say, I have it. They are saying a lot about, you know, he disregards all the social protocol, you know, wearing a face mask, you know. He will even spite those who are wearing face masks.
I tell you.
So, again, that is the reality. If, you know, I would say the worst come to worst and Trump becomes the president again.
Talking crude oil now, I tend to be very interested in that, because when we talk about money, we know what's happening with Nigeria already. We have revenue shortfall and we need to get money one way or the other. Now, we've seen what's been happening with OPEC and non-OPEC trying to cut, you know, and all of. So if it happens, whichever way, what do you see happening? What would be the effects on countries like Nigeria, Angola, and all of us? What could happen to us?
Okay, so for each of them, there are two scenarios. We all know that Trump, if he wins, if he retains the seat as the American president, is in support of fossil fuels. He's going to give more licenses to people that want to do exploration. And I want to believe, in the short run, that might help the prices of crude to go up, knowing that countries that are into oil exploration are not going to be out of business. But in the long run, you could see, because you still have the supply glut, so the prices might still come down in the long run. So there are two ways to it. If it's a Biden presidency, Biden is for renewable energy. So, and we also know that if Biden comes on board, he said he's going to try and see how he's going to work back with Iran. But we also know that there is a Senate, the majority Republican Senate, that might prevent him from doing that. So if we have a Biden presidency, it's also two ways. We could have, if he's able to bring renewable energy on board, he comes on and brings renewable energy up, there's going to be a spike in demand, at least temporarily, and countries like Nigeria are going to have to be forced to look for how to really diversify. Because right now, if America comes on board with renewable energy, most other countries come on board with renewable energy. We have been touting, we need to diversify our revenue sources. Probably right now, we will get serious. We won't just talk, but we will take actions, because we know that our lifeline is actually being really threatened. So that's one. The other one is that Biden comes on, and for some reasons, maybe we have a blue, because, you know, there's been like 4 scenarios. You have the blue wave, where everything goes democratic, and then you have the second scenario where Biden makes the presidency, but you have the majority Republican Senate, which is what is most likely going to be like. And then you have the third scenario where Trump wins, and you have, that is what is currently obtainable now. And you have the fourth scenario, Trump wins, and you have a Democratic, Senate. We know that cannot happen. So if we now, if Biden comes up and he has the blue wave, if we have the blue wave, we're going to find a situation whereby he might get ahead with the Iran deal. If he gets ahead with the Iran deal, there's still going to be, Iran comes on board with his own share of oil. Yeah. There is supply glut. So we're still going to have the oil, tanking. Except, so like I said, 2 scenarios for Biden. Either the renewable energy comes on board, and demand for oil prices, demand for oil goes up, oil prices goes up, and that's going to help Nigeria in the short run. But in the long run, we have to look for how to, diversify, or is able to get it, and there is a supply glut, and then they will now be doing the OPEC cuts. You know, you have the shale fighting and all of that to make sure that we keep the demand together. So that's how I see it.
And crude oil price. When I hear crude oil, I know what that means for. But I want research shows that average growth rate under a Republican president at about 3.6%, and for Republican 2.6%. Now, in terms of strengthening fiscal and monetary policies, what are your expectations from whoever wins this election?
Like she said, there will be two expectations for me, and if we have a Trump presidency, then you begin to still continue to experience this what I call something that undermines the monetary independence of the Fed. You know, I mean, we've seen instances where President Trump has had to bully the Fed president, you know, to align him with some of his own fiscal policy. I mean, we see that continue. The Democrats seem, you know, to be decent kind of politicians. I don't know. The Republicans were not like this. I think it's President Trump that is redefining what the Republicans stand for now. You know, unfortunately, we've not seen much of comment from the core Republican coming out to condemn it, maybe for political reasons, you know. But if this is the new norm of what a Republican presidency will look like, then it is safe to suggest that the Democrats are kind of decent, you know. In that light, we will not see a president that will then bully the U.S. Fed to, you know, following whatever policies they are trying to. I mean, because the sanctity of that institution is also very important for, you know, global economic balance. True. Now, that said, what that means is that what we should then expect, you know, if President Trump should emerge again, we will still continue to have, you know, the current status quo will continue more or less. We will see a situation where his tantrum with China will still continue. You know, trade continue to, you know, slow globally because of that. And then the likelihood is that, like she said, the oil market is not likely to get to that $100 level that we used to have in the days of President Obama. Because again, it was when President Obama was, you know, I think it was 2 years to his leaving office, that there was that deliberate effort to shift, you know, from fossil sources of energy, like she mentioned. And then we've seen, you know, development of renewables. You know, at first it was more of, you know, fighting the Arab nations by developing shale oil. But now at these prices, shale oil may not be as attractive anymore. So if you get to a point where shale oil now, I mean, oil prices now get to, you know, $70, $80, then the shale guys will come back to business, and then the glut, like you mentioned, happens again, and oil prices will tank again. So the lessons for Nigeria is that the earlier we start realizing that we cannot continue to build our economy on oil, the better for us.
And that's really scary. But some say we need oil to also diversify. Let me do that as a follow-up. How well have we been able to use that to diversify our economy? We've seen CBN, we've seen other development financial institutions trying to support agriculture, trying to support the creative sector. We saw what's happening with National Theatre at the moment. Now, so how long is the transition period?
So let's be practical. When you say you need oil to diversify from oil, to be frank with you, in the last 3 years, the oil revenue has not been sufficient to fund our recurrent expenditure. To a very large extent, you know, in the last two years, we've been borrowing to even fund recurrent expenditure, let alone, you know, the capital component. I mean, you know that the capital component of our budget always suffers. So when you look at the budget rollout for this year, 13 trillion or 13.1 trillion, and we're coming from about 9.9 trillion in 2020, again, you'll be wondering whether we are really, you know, serious. And you look at the sources for revenue. Government has projected to make about 7.5 trillion naira of revenue, of which oil is barely accounting for 2 trillion of that revenue sources. So there are so many other sources that have been projected that at best are not realistic. So again, what you then have will be a situation where the same central bank you mentioned then, you know, begin to finance the budget of government through what we call ways and means, where government, the central bank practically prints the currency and gives it to government to fund the budget. And that's the reality of the situation. If we are really serious about diversifying, there are two problems to solve. One, we are overspending or the recurrent side? I mean, we've made that argument. Do we have to incur so much to run the civil service where you have barely 1% of the population working? You know, but we do a lot of funding of that. Then the second thing is that how much are we investing in other, you know, so in other words, you need to grow your revenue, but how much are we investing in other sources? You know, our ease of doing business, the policies around, you know, businesses operating, how favorable are they to the extent that government can now begin to collect those taxes? I mean, we've seen situations where businesses have had to shut down in the last 3 to 4 years and pack out of Nigeria, practically leaving the country. And this is a situation where we do not have foreign direct investment flowing in. In fact, foreign portfolio investment that has been providing the cushion for the central bank on the foreign exchange side, they are also drying up. So what alternatives do we have? Remittances are also going to significantly slow down because we still have that gap between the parallel market and the official window. So when, you know, when folks abroad are bringing in their money, they want higher rate for it. They'll go to the parallel market. So the remittances inflow will also suffer. So to a very large extent, we are most likely still going to suffer another round of devaluation. So these are some of the issues that foreign investors are looking at. And if they won't come here to invest in our economy, how do we get that much of non-oil revenue that we seriously need for us to survive, you know, the tough, you know, global macroeconomic challenges that are facing us?
And,
I know you want to say something in regards to diversity. Okay, go ahead.
I listened in on someone yesterday, and he said, okay, if this is how they want to do it, why don't you just slash the budget into two?
Absolutely.
50% to recurrent, 50% to capital expenditure. However, it is you now want to do the recurrent, you do it, but at least let us have some, because when you have capital expenditure, that's when you have infrastructure, that's when you would be able to provide enabling environment for businesses, and then you can actually be able to make your, your revenue via taxes. But still now you're not providing that platform, and you still want to keep on taxing people. Then another one, Nigeria has an investment problem. We actually don't have any viable anything that anyone can invest in. And like he mentioned, if we had before, I'm going to have to mention this, the NSAS has kind of, put some kind of lead on that, because people go like, so I bring my money in, I invest so much, and this is what happens to me at the end of the day. Do you understand? So those are things that the government really needs to look at. We need to do prudent spending. You can't want to, when you want to compare us with maybe how they charge taxes somewhere, you compare us with the developing economies, then when it comes out to provide social amenities, you compare us. Do you understand? That double standard cannot exist.
Absolutely.
It can't.
Let's talk tax. Business people are always interested in tax, and according to also research, I think Trump passed a law for almost the biggest tax court in the U.S. What do you think business owners, how do you think they will react to this? What will their position in this election? Okay,
so Trump cut, I think he reduced the tax from 35 to 21%. That is corporate taxes. Yeah, corporate taxes. And they were very, very, everybody was excited. On the strength of that, economy grew, unemployment numbers went down. I learned it went as far as the least in like half of a century, until COVID-19 came and scattered everything. Now, but despite that, we also have the spat with China. You have the trade war, you have the tariffs. So because of the tariffs now, there is a kind of manufacturing recession in America. Do you understand? So if Biden will come on board and he's going to manage, so both of them, both Trump and Biden, they have their policies are similar where infrastructure and what's it called now, international trade is concerned. It's just that the approach that is different. While Trump wants it's my way or the highway, I want to believe the Biden team will be more, they said that they can work with more reconciliatory moves where you use support groups, you use regional blocks to make sure that you get what you want. So if the Biden team can achieve that, even though they said they are going to raise the taxes, and he has actually also pegged it, I think maybe for income earners, if you earn above 400,000, that's when that is going to apply to you. So you also realize that there's going to be a lot of disposable income for people at the base of the pyramid. More money goes around, and the whole economy is going to benefit from it eventually. Because right now, even though there is a tax cut, there is manufacturing recession.
How does that come to you?
Well, I think that, so some of what Trump had to do, when he assumed office were, to follow up with some of his promises, even though it doesn't come to most, most Americans as great. But we saw the results in the, in the GDP figures that were released. I mean, like you said, before COVID-19 came. But what we would expect right now is, depending on who wins again, if it's President Trump, we believe it's the continuation of the policies that he has rolled out that stays. But what I foresee with a Biden presidency, it's, the Democrats believe in, taxing the poor, the rich, to, to actually favor the poor. So the likelihood is, someone may argue that some of those taxes that were cut were possibly for its own, moral hazard issues, for his own benefits, because he has, some companies. Some people argue that he came into the presidency very broke, those are arguments out there, But again, the issue then will be, if we have a Biden, presidency, then we'll begin to see, some changes apply. And if you look at what we've seen in the market, in fact, since the beginning of this week, most of the global markets have been on a positive mood.
True.
In the U.S. equities, you read it out during your introduction.
Yes.
All the equities market, Dow Jones, S&P are hitting the roof. Yields are falling drastically on fixed income securities. Because in fact, the sentiment out there is that whoever wins, the fact that we don't have that dark cloud hanging around the U.S. elections and all, we'll begin to see some positive momentum in the market before we see some corrections at a later time.
So you also believe that this positive correction, like he said, would continue the market despite whoever wins at the end of the day?
Well, it's going to continue for a short time, because, the momentum is there right now. So before it slows, it's going to continue for a short time until... Maybe, let's see, if it's Trump, we definitely know he's going to die down, But if it's Biden, people are going to wait to see how he reels out his policies, his first 100 days in the office, what are the things he's going to do, and they're going to pick the cue from there and,
Now, cutting imports from China is something that we should also talk about. I think both of them are ready to cut. How will Nigeria take any advantage? Can we take advantage of this and not be exploited in all of this? Many think that China is almost taking over Nigeria too.
Well, I believe the only way that African countries, I'm not just talking about Nigeria now, will not be exploited, is to form that regional bloc. We need to really speed up the AFTA, We need to speed so that we can be able to negotiate and speak as one bloc. Instead of you speak as a company, a tiny country, China comes to you, offers you all the juicy deals and, without looking at the whatever side effects might come on at the end of the day. So, back to the question, what do we need to do about cutting imports from China? Based on what we have on ground, if it's a Trump presidency and it continues with this, you have to buy so and so what of products from US and all of that. Because I said, I think China has slowed down. The phase one of that trade deal is having some issues right now. If that's what we have, I foresee a situation that China might go like, I really don't have to, continue with this. I don't have to fulfill the terms of this. And they start making incursions, which is what they've been really doing, making incursions into other countries, seeing how they're going to, push out their exports. And our industries, they're just, we don't have anything. So they can come in with their cheap funding from their government and we take over and, well, we might not necessarily become a Chinese colony, but anything can happen. But if it's a Biden presidency, I want to believe that we're still going to have, we're going to be able to reap from it more if we go as a regional bloc than we go it alone. So whatever the countries within AFTA need to put together to make sure that we start making these things work. Because see how the Eurozone, you have the weak countries in the Eurozone, but they're not being exploited because they are going as a bloc. So if we can go as a bloc, it's really going to profit the African nations.
Robert, definitely I'd like you to comment on that because I don't want my country to be exploited.
But to be honest, we have to, put our own act together if we are not going to be exploited. Because even within AFTA, how serious are we, within our own, regional bloc? You remember when the president went to, was it Addis Ababa then to sign, the AFTA agreement?
Yeah.
The week after, the borders were shut. Those were policies that the president signed after, and then we shut the land borders. I mean, so if we really want to be serious, we have our person, vying for the office of the, World Trade Organization.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it won't benefit us because those are places where things are done the right way. You can't, all the nepotism we see here don't happen there. So what it means is that if we really want to benefit anything from international trade, whether it's a Biden or a Trump presidency, I agree with going as a bloc. But Nigeria, we have instances where countries are flying over us to invest in other countries, neighboring countries like Ghana. Foreign direct investment, that we have been suffering from, over the years. To be honest, the blame cannot be put at the doorstep of the current government, because if you look at FDI data, it's over 10 years that we've been suffering that what we call sudden stop. But the point here is that if we want to attract investment into our economy, we need to put our own house in order. Part of putting our own house in order is having the right policies in place. In fact, the most attractive policy to anybody who wants to invest is to even check what your foreign exchange policy looks like. As it is right now, it's not attractive to any investment. Do you understand? So if we must get it right, it requires us to make sure that we put our house in order from the monetary side, from the fiscal side. Countries have clear-cut monetary policy, fiscal policy, trade policy, investment policy. What's Nigeria's investment policy? It's not clear-cut. So those are the things that we need to, to put right for us to begin to attract those investments. Those are internal things that when they are right, we even know what we want. Right now, we cannot keep calling, investors to come when they know that, if they bring their money today, they are not even sure of what they get. Yeah. Like she said, we are not sure whether they will put up their structure, and some people will go there and destroy them in the name of, protest. So again, these are some of the issues that, investors will look at before they even come to your country. So for as it is right now, Nigeria is not an attractive investment destination. Not because the returns are not here, but because the risk factors are too enormous. Yeah. Those are the issues we need to address.
And with all of the efforts, we see a recovery plan at a particular time, and now we have a 2050 plan. Okay, that's to lift 100 million people out of poverty in 10 years. We also have this the sustainability plan, and we're also trying to just make things work after COVID-19 and all of that. Where do you see all of this taking us? Nigeria has been a country has not lacked documentation or documents to work with, but it's like implementing them to the latter has been a challenge.
We have no political will. The problems of this country look so complex, yet they require simple solutions. You just need the will, and it has to come from the top. If you have the will to set this country right, we can do it. So any of those plans you mentioned, beautiful documents, pick one of them and implement. And then you find out that the country is gradually being transformed. So if there is no political will, they are just rhetorics to say we have 2050 plan, we'll be here. You were here when we had Vision 2020.
Yeah.
This is 2020, 2 months to go.
Where are we with Vision 2020? Let me ask, let me see this. We're talking about business dealings now with America again. I was just thinking crude oil, a little bit of agricultural produce. What basically do we even export out of this country and make forex? What's your perception of our business dealings with United States?
Well, I think the major business dealing we had with them was the crude,
crude.
Which Obama, like you mentioned, they systematically, because, and really that is it. You have to have a plan. You have to have a roadmap and work with it. I remember, was it some time ago, we wanted to export yam. They had to bring the yams back because, it was bought. There's no quality control. There's no quality control. So as a country, even if we want to do anything, any export, where are the processes we have put in place? We need to put processes in place, and the people at those ports that need to be checked, they have to have personal commitments to making sure the process goes through. I would say the problem with Nigeria is not with our leaders, because Our leaders are from within us.
True.
They are not from another place. They are from within us. So as a people, if you get there now, what are you going to do? If these are the steps that need to be taken, and you have someone who is close to you, but doesn't know how to do it, you want to, put the person there. So to be able to grow, export, whatever it is we need to do, we need to talk to ourselves as a people. First and foremost, we need to, have a roadmap, follow our roadmap to the letter. When we follow our roadmap to the letter, then we can now start talking about things we want to export. As it is now, crude oil, they're not buying any more from us again. So what other agricultural produce do we have there? And like you've mentioned, I can't look at the disparity in exchange rates. I go through so much stress. I make my export, and I have to bring it in and sell it at some rate that is how many hundreds of dollars, hundreds of naira below nobody wants to do that. So it's not as if we have arable lands in the north, vast arable lands. We have a lot of products, a lot of cereals, that we can export. We need a quality control. We need the will, the people's will, the political will. Everything should be there. Then when we have it together, maybe by the time we have that, we can start looking at, diversifying our economy. We are going away from oil. We are going into agriculture. And agriculture really has received a lot of boost. Yeah. I don't see why we're still crawling. But one other thing that I would say is I thank God, and I'm sure the authorities that patted themselves at the back when COVID-19 started, and they would have gone like, wow, we got it right. We locked the borders at the right time. Because we locked the borders, we had to look into local rice production and all of that, because I can't imagine that COVID had gotten us at a point where we had to be, where we're still importing. Because remember at that time, most countries, they stopped export. The first thing that was at the back of every country's mind was self-protectionism. How do we continue to survive? So imagine that our food was being imported. God knows what would have happened to us right now, But we have to put things in place. We need to know what we need to do. And with the right political will, like he has mentioned, and the people, if we are here, I remember when Madam Due Process was there, everything, there was a time someone I knew wanted to do something and was like, I need to check the price very well because they are going to cross-check. If it's out of range, I'm going to be out of... Everybody was doing things the right way. Not that you have some things inflated, and because they've inflated the price. Apart from inflating the prices, part of the profit has gone to settling some people. Yeah. The projects don't get done. So if we need to get all of those things out of the way.
Robert, I'd also like your view on the business dealing with United States. I just remember that Goa now and all of this. How well have we explored all of this to benefit our exporters and build our industries?
As it is right now, U.S. is not a major trading partner to Nigeria. Europe is still a major trading partner to Nigeria. One of the quarters, I think it was early this year, we saw that Ghana was the largest trading partner, to Nigeria in terms of exports. Trade-related issues, as it borders on, our dealings with, the rest of the world, has to do with how much of, internal arrangement that we have within ourselves, and how much we really focus on things that matter domestically, rather than, just looking to other countries. Most countries will do business with you when when it is right. If, the economics, which was what I like to say, is not right, countries will, easily just, move away and do business with other countries. And that is what we are beginning to see right now in our country. I think what should be of even greatest worry to people in government today is the quantum of remittances we are getting from outside this country. So today we talk about oil, but in the actual sense, oil is not the biggest commodity we export. The biggest commodity we export are our people. Yeah. And that's why you see the huge amount of remittances that come into the country. Now, for how long? The best of brains are leaving this country. We all face it every day. Every day the pressure is mounting, especially when you see things that are happening, issues around police brutality, so many things that cause people to want to say, this is not a country I want to stay, let me go. And if everybody leaves, what happens? What becomes of our country? It's a situation, if you now get to the point where touts are the ones holding positions. They are the governors, they are the, presidents, they are the senators. If we get to that point, what becomes of our country? So I think that's what should be the greatest worry to policymakers. How do we stop the mass exodus of our people, the best of brains in this country? And I can tell you, because in my industry, the best of brains have left. And that's the reality of what we face.
I think that's a topic for another day. We need to talk about this movement of our brains value out of the country. I must say this has been very interesting. You want to say something in just 20 seconds?
Okay, so really, the change Nigeria seeks begins with you, begins with myself. When you get to the traffic light and you're running late and you have the police escort with you, what do you do?
Big question.
Do you wait? Or because you have the police escort, you move on? It starts with you. It starts with I.
Thank you very much. That's Mrs. Yemisi Shola Oyegbade. She's the finance manager, GNC International Limited. And my brother and friend is also here, Mr. Robert OMOTUNDE, Chief Investment Officer, AFRINVEST Assets Management Limited. Thank you very much for your time on the show. I really appreciate this. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All